This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
Greetings all and welcome to the show. Have I got a magnificent conversation to share with you on this particular installment of the Scars and Guitars podcast because it features Tomas Haake from Meshuggah, the Swedish maestros. The conversation comes about due to the launch of a new album from the lads titled Immutable. Now, if you're listening via the podcast apps that are out there, Apple and Spotify and God knows how many others, we're going to play a tune. It is titled Ligature Marks, and there's a reason for that which you'll hear deeper into the conversation. If you've tuned in via YouTube, we're going to cut to the conversation with Tomas right now. Either way, let's go. Mate, how's the conversations been going around this album here? Because I did listen into a couple of the interviews, and it seems like as though you're. I don't know whether people have been listening to the album before they've been talking to you, but I suspect some of them haven't been.
I think that's definitely the case. I know that we did have like one thing where a lot of press people were invited to listen to the album, but it was only like a one night thing, one listen type of thing. So I do think that a lot of people that we have been talking to have not necessarily heard the whole thing, but more just bits and pieces and whatever the singles that are out, you know.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Well, no, I got sent a copy. Was it last week or thereabouts? So I've lived with it for at least maybe 5 days now or so, which I thought was important to do because, you know, the band does have such a great history, but it is the new bloody album and it's an opportunity to talk about it. And I think new material is really important for even a great band like you guys.
I appreciate that, man.
You know, so what have I got lined up for you in terms of questions then after all of that? Look, the new album, it is called Immutable. And look, I'm an old fan and I find that it's subtly different to a lot of your material to date, which I'm enjoying, I've got to say, because I feel like as though you've done what I would describe as a bare metal respray on the band's sound. You've stripped it back a little bit to the nuts and bolts. Would you agree?
Yeah, to a certain degree, for sure. I think, I mean, obviously with maybe, you know, with Violent Sleep of Reason, we were going for something that we felt like at the time. And if you take songs like Clockworks and Nostrum and some stuff on there, it's really kind of erratic sounding, kind of pulling and tugging at you as a listener. Whereas I think this one, it wasn't even deliberate, but we did realize after the fact that all songs have backbeat on the drums. It's like,
yeah,
we've never released an album that's been all backbeat through and through. So that combined with, you know, you take one person like Frederick out of the band or out of the studio and production and mixing process to a great deal. That also has a direct effect because then other voices are heard more and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of reasons why you're going to end up with a slightly different album. I mean, first of all, you have also just the fact that we're older now, and it's been 6 years since Violent Sleep of Reason, and we do change constantly as people and as musicians, and what we kind of like to hear in ourselves and what we're kind of going for. And that goes for anything from like the song material and the riffing themselves, but maybe even more when it comes to like tailoring your guitar tone, your bass tone, like stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that combined, they make for something that's going to obviously have an effect on how a new album comes out, you know, for sure. And yeah, so I do feel that it's different in a lot of ways, and maybe a little less young, if you will, in the sense that you're in a point in time and in our careers where we're not trying to impress anyone other than ourselves, and we really don't have anything to prove. I'm not saying we had anything to prove on the last album either, but of course, slowly over time, you kind of grow more and more into like something else, and you do care more about each track, and you do tend to write more for the track, and you're a little more, you just tend to like really kind of you try your best to do the best with each track and to make it kind of pop and make it into something that you think that you, first of all, it has to pass the bar of us as a band and that we like it. But then you also, it's all, of course, always in the back of your mind that I think people will like this too. I hope so. And that's all you can really do at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah, look, I think old fans, people like me that have been around since Chaos Fear, thereabouts, you know, sort of 97, 98, we're going to find a lot to like about this one. You're never a band that throws curveballs, so to speak, in terms of you're not going to sort of alter the band's sound by taking it into a different quadrant of the compass, so to speak, and doing something completely out of the box, if you like.
No, exactly. No, you're right. Yeah, for
you know. But something else I'd say, I feel like as though that there's a conscious, it sounds as though there's been a conscious effort to make the songs more musical, as in there were some moments where I found myself humming the groove later, such as the groove under the solo in They Move Below. Do you think that's the case, that there was an effort to make it a bit more musical, a bit more memorable in that respect?
I think I don't know if we ever could ever be that precise about what we're trying to do, and say we want it to sound more musical or sound more this or that. I will say that I do find that it came out maybe sound a little more orchestral in places. And when you take like the layers of melodies and guitars, and if you go back a few albums, we never really used to do that. We always kind of stuck with what was doable on 5 people live on stage. So you would normally only have one lead on the guitar, and you wouldn't do harmonies on those. And for the last, with Violent Sleep, we kind of started like not caring so much about that, and maybe even more on this one. That gives you a certain vibe too, because you might have like 4 different harmonies on a guitar melody on top of what's going on underneath, and that gives it kind of that. You sometimes even take away the feel of, is this necessarily a guitar, or is this a synth, or what am I really hearing? So you have kind of aspects like that, and when you say that, whether it's caring about the musicality of the music, if you will, I think that's, again, like that just kind of, this is what happened this time around. This is how the songs came out, and it's not necessarily something that we sit and have necessarily a good check on ourselves what we're really doing. It's just like, this is the music that came out because of the times we're in, because of who we are as people, in 2021 when we wrote this, or in 2020 and 2021, and that's just kind of what happens,
Yeah, gotcha. Yep. Now, as I say, I've had the album for 4 or 5 days, a bit longer maybe, but so far, Ligature Marks, that's the tune that stands out. It's just such a slow, awesome, slow, menacing monster. The polyrhythms that you've got there just sound impossible to remember. I don't know how you do what you do, I've got to say. But was that the tune that was amongst the hardest to get right?
No, I wouldn't say so. It was actually once we kind of started rehearsing it, it just fell into place. But there's a funny story about it, because this song almost did not end up on the album. This was something that the last week of rehearsal, when we already decided on all the songs on the album, and like 1 week away from us going down to packing everything up and going to the studio, Morten is playing this thing in his room where he's like kind of working on songs and stuff, and it's Ligature Marks. And I'm like, dude, what the hell is this? Like, what is this gem you've been hiding from us? It's like, I don't know if it's ready. Like, okay, but for God's sakes, play it, And he played it, and it was like this. It was already exactly the format and the shape that it came out on the album, so it was already done. And I'm like, man, what are you thinking? This song is so fucking awesome. This has to be in there. And he was like, oh okay. I guess I guess it's kind of cool. It's like, what do you mean kind of cool? And actually, I'm so stoked about that, because it, to me, just like for you, it's not going to be the same for everyone, obviously, but to me, it ended up being probably the strongest track on the album. And it's, if not that, then it's at least the one that kind of just gets in your brain and it kind of stays 100%. There, So I'm stoked to hear you say that about that track, because it's definitely like one of those that really kind of sealed the deal for me, when it comes to the material. Yeah.
I'm on exactly the same page. I was listening to it in the car, and I got to say, I dropped the kids off to school and it was on, and I couldn't really listen to it properly when the kids are in the car, because all the yelling and shit that goes on. And I got back in and I thought, I'm going to listen to that song from the beginning. And I actually sat in the school car park and I listened to it and I thought, I reckon that's amongst some of the finest tunes you guys have ever put together, which is really saying something. So it begs the question then, why didn't the label think of releasing that one as a single?
Actually, this was a debate, I think, between not so much us, but between like people on the label. I know Marcus Steiger. This was the first one when we played the album from the first time, which was the first master. This would have been in August. Then we went back and started remixing the whole thing, and then mastered it again, and so on. But when he heard the album the first time, this was actually one of the tracks that to him also was like, oh my God, it's driving me insane. Ligature marks, and he had like, it was ligature marks and God He Sees in Mirrors, and I don't remember I think it was Kaleidoscope or one of the other one. No, Light the Shortening Fuse or Kaleidoscope. But those were like his four favorites. But I think Ligature Marks, even for him, was like, that was like, he loved it. So then it was more a decision making kind of process. And at that point, we didn't know which ones we wanted to make videos for and which ones are we going to like release as singles and such. And but yes, in retrospect, it's like, yeah, we should have definitely put that out as a single, but there we go. People get to hear it tonight or tomorrow. So I hope more people are like us and stoked about that song, because I love it. Yeah.
I think old fans will get it. They'll hear that one and go, oh shit, that's the banger. That's the one.
I think so.
Yeah. You mentioned Marcus and Atomic Fire there. Was it the decision to move from Nuclear to Atomic Fire? Was that an obvious decision for you? In other words, was there more on the table from Atomic Fire compared to what Nuclear Blast are putting on the table?
No, it was not. It was not an easy decision necessarily. I mean, we never wanted to break with Marcus because Marcus has been with us for our whole careers. He contacted the band before I even joined the band in 1989, and we signed with Nuclear Blast and with him in 1990. So it was kind of almost unfathomable, or like, no, we can't, like, we don't want to split with Marcus, but we didn't like being put in the middle of this as we were. And we really, we dragged it out forever for as long as we possibly could to not make a decision to go this or that way, because we were kind of just waiting to see how it was all going to pan out, because there was so many changes happening with Believe kind of buying Nuclear Blast and a bunch of people staying with Nuclear Blast and a bunch of people leaving and Marcus kind of, doing his own thing, which is, for good and bad. He started a new label, which is exciting, I think, for all the people that he did bring with him and for him too. But it's also like, this is like one of the first releases ever on that new label. So everything is kind of a little bit up in the air, and everything is not like necessarily like as ordered as it has been previous, with where you have people that have been working with you for like 15 years or more. But yeah, we also had a very close working relationship with the Nuclear Blast LA office, and they have people there that really helped us with so many things over the years, from merch designs to tour poster designs to all sorts of stuff. So we did have a very close relationship with them, and to us it was really a bummer that we ultimately had to go with this or that, and at the end of the day, it's loyalty, even though like in LA, for example, you have Gerardo Martinez. We've been working with him since he was a kid, basically. I mean, we worked with him for, I don't know, 17 years or something like that. So yeah, it was a tough decision, and it was not one that we ever wanted to have to make. But at the end of the day, it's Marcus has been there through and through, and he's always like carried the flag real high for Meshuggah. It's always been one of his favorite bands, and that's at the end of the day, that's kind of where we need to go.
Yeah, you guys know what you're doing at this point. Your instincts are on point. That's it. That's all you got really at the end of the day, isn't it? Whether it's, it's even with any job type scenario, if you like. I'm not calling Marcus your boss, but I know what you're saying. Okay. You got to have a relationship that feels comfortable and one that you don't necessarily have to work at because it's just too fucking difficult otherwise, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly.
Just go back to like the songwriting side of things. I sort of mentioned it in passing, but you're one of the few bands. I'm a musician, but I really struggle with the time signatures you guys do, just playing along to them a lot of the time. It's very difficult unless I think you're natively, you guys are mathematicians in so many ways. But look, this is your 9th album, and are you at a point where things, do they just happen in the studio between yourself and Fred? Like, do you lay down a groove, or does he lay down a riff and it sort of just seamlessly interlocks, or do you still really have to work at things in order for them to sound as cohesive? And that's the key word, as cohesive as they do.
Yeah, no, it doesn't happen like that at all. I mean, we don't jam up one single riff, and we haven't done in 20 years or more. I mean, when I joined the band already, they were using like Porta Studios, and they were programming drums on Roland R5s machines, and it was all like built at home. And then once you kind of feel like you have a song, then we would bring it to the rehearsal and try to kind of emulate whatever it was programmed. And that's continued ever since. It's just been easier and easier because then, of course, by the mid-90s, you introduce computers. A couple of years later, you introduce music software and stuff where you can just program you don't even need the drum machine anymore. You can just program in the actual software and stuff. And so this band is in a lot of ways, it's a result of the tool that we had at hand. And it's continued to be like that. So there's not, initially with every song, there's nothing, what do you call it? Like, it's not, it doesn't come from us as a band. It's just one guy's idea, and you start messing with it, and you start programming drums, and that's still how we work. And Frederick, as far as a songwriter, he really hasn't been doing so much of that songwriting aspect in quite a while now. I mean, he wrote his demon's name. The demon's name is Surveillance on Colossus. And then he helped figure out a few songs like Swarm. He helped, we were actually in the rehearsal room and try to kind of figure out what changes we needed to do to that one. And I Am Colossus and the song Marrow. But other than that, then for Violent Sleep, he didn't write any of the music for Violent Sleep, and he didn't write anything for this one either. And he wasn't in the studio. He didn't. It's all Morten. Guitar playing wise on this album it's all Morten except for 4 solos.
Okay.
So Frederick laid down 4 leads, but all the guitar melodies and stuff. And I know that a lot of people so far, and the interviews that we've done for this album, have gotten that completely wrong. They think that every guitar melody is Frederick. No, it's only the leads, and the rest. So in other words, 99% of the guitar work on the album is Morten, and he does all the melodies and all those things. And even on They Move Below, what sounds like kind of like a guitar solo, that's Morten as well. But Frederick did lay down 4 leads for the album, which we were stoked about, because Frederick does have a very signature style, as a lead guitarist. So it was important to us, and I think it's important to the fans that he is on the album. And he is coming back to play with us, live as well. But there has been some I don't know if it's miscommunication or just people, I think, per automatic think that Frederick has been a lot more involved than he actually has. But I will say for Violent Sleep of Reason, for example, Frederick did record a lot of the guitars for that album. Most of the better chunks of the guitars on Violent Sleep, he recorded the guitars. He did not write the music, but he recorded the guitars. On this album, he did not write any music, and he didn't play much of the guitars, only the 4 leads on top of all the guitar work that was already there, so to speak. because he's very busy. He built a studio, and that took like 3 years instead of 1 year, and it's become like a very popular, studio as far as. So I think it became a monster, both constructing it and building it, and then how popular it got. And Daniel Bergstrand is working out of that studio now too. So it's crowded a lot of times with bands and stuff, which is a good thing business wise. But I think that he thought that maybe he would get some more alone time there to like focus on his like next solo album and stuff. And I think it's just been kind of. Instead, it's just become work, for good and bad. Obviously, I think he enjoys it too. But so that's kind of been his focus since he kind of stepped off there for a hiatus about like, I don't know, 4 years ago, whatever it was, 5 years ago. But yeah, the idea is at least he's coming back now, and he seems pretty stoked about it. He's been away now for a good while, and I think he feels ready to kind of come back and do that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, actually, because you're one of the few bands out there where the guitarist and the drummer are the most public and identifiable face of the group. And, excuse me, sorry. But and what I mean by that is, fans don't know, they don't get it. I mean, I'm a fan, don't get me wrong, but they don't get the opportunity to talk to people the way that I am, if you like. So they draw their own conclusions. And I'm sure you know that you yourself and Frederick, go onto a YouTube video of a live performance of you guys and have a look at the comments. The comments are going to be about yourself and Fred. It's just how it is, okay? But fans don't necessarily understand that people get human too. Surprise. Yeah. And you move and you groove and you've got a different dynamic, and that dynamic changes over time. And it's really cool to hear that whilst Frederick is doing his thing, that you've got another killer guitarist in the group who can step up and produce music, which sounds there's no change.
Yeah, I mean, Morten definitely writes music that is different from Frederick's stuff, but it's still within kind of within the confines of what makes Meshuggah, So it's and kind of as long as we're using the same sound and we're going for the same kind of approach, it's all going to sound like true Meshuggah stuff. But I will say that Morten stuff is usually maybe a little more visceral and maybe not so necessarily as advanced rhythmically, but more he's going for gut feeling, and so his songs are a little more like you feel them. So like Ligature Marks, for example, so it has like it has a directness about it that I really like. Whereas you take some songs that we've made over the years are a little more blue and brainy, if you will. That is also cool, and it's an important aspect of our band that you have those two different kind of approaches. So you take Bleed, for example, it's written by Frederick, very blue, very brainy song. And then you take something like Ligature Marks, that is more like Nutsack and Viscera, which is Morten more. To make it's not that, black and white all the time. Sometimes they kind of intersect more as far as like what kind of stuff they write. But it is a little frustrating sometimes, even though I'm just a drummer, so I'm looking in at other people's comments. But I mean, even if you go back all the way to like Nothing album, so we're talking 20 years, Morten has been the biggest songwriter in the band since then. He has written on his own more tracks than anyone else has ever written in this band. So he has actually been, if you will, the main songwriter, even though, of course, me and Dick have worked together on a lot of songs, especially on Violent Sleep. We had maybe the bigger part of the album, but that's me and him together. So if you take person by person, Morten has by far written more than anyone else in the band over the last 20 years at least. So that gets overlooked a lot, and it's a little sad. He doesn't really care. He's not looking for fame and glory in that regard. But it's still like, come on, man, credit where credit's due. So it's a little bit annoying sometimes when it's like, oh, come on, people, get your facts straight.
He's Malcolm to the Angus Young, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
The bedrock. Yeah. Now. I've hinted at this, but I'll go there with this one here because I think it's important. You know, with a career as impressive and as critically acclaimed as yours, you're one of the few bands who has an equal amount of critical acclaim as you do fandom, if you like. At this point, the group is universally regarded as the flag bearer of the union between technical proficiency, crushing heaviness. But something else, you've always carried yourself without any pretension. You are the people's band in many ways. So could you single out any aspect of your career within the band that you would say is the most special or significant?
I mean, there are so many things that kind of paved the way for us, as it were, in regards to, like, it's not just a matter of being, you know, a band that finds their own sound, or being, whether you're good musicians or you're this or that, or you have to have luck and timing and stuff like that. So if anything, those things have, there's plenty of awesome fucking bands that are still in garages, and we all know that, and they will never get out of the garage. But there has to be some things that, of course, we started early. It was a different time altogether. In 1990, you know, extremely different times, extremely different music, what was around. You know, you had obviously the big bands, and you had some death metal and stuff, and you had Pantera, and you had bands like that. But compared to now, metal now is this enormous vista that is just never ending, and there's what can be included in that array is pretty much basically anything at this point. So very different world. But then we released Destroyer Race Improve in 1995. There was some EMI or Sony boss or something like that heard it and really liked Daniel Bergstrand's production for it. It opened like a door to this, to that, and that made us kind of, I think, made us get the Machine Head in Europe tour that we were out with them for like 10 weeks. And they were huge with their first album, Burn My Eyes, in Europe. They were really huge. So that was a good, like, opening the market in Europe for us. We got to play for thousands and thousands of people, obviously. And so we've had those like things that kind of opened doors for us. And then we got the Slayer tour in the US in 99, which opened kind of the US market to us and made some guys, you know, of Tool recognize us, and they wanted to bring us on tour. So then we went on tour with Tool, and that gave us kind of the Ozfest gig, and then, you know, so timing and luck is also like a big portion of it. And but I kind of tend to go back to what you said, like the people's band in a way. And I think we've always kind of looked at what we do and ourselves as people, as musicians. We've always been kind of humble about that, or we try to be, you know, and that's kind of what we grew up with too. It's quite a common thing actually in Sweden. It's something we call jantelagen, and the further north you go in Sweden, you will kind of see that people are like that, and you're kind of, during your upbringing, you get told over and over again, you don't think you are don't think you're hot shit, you know, like, just, you know, do your thing. And even Peter Forsberg, one of the most famous hockey players on the planet, was always extremely, like, kind of humble about, like, no, I'm not. I don't really. Yeah, I guess on a good day I can, you know, shoot
I can hit a puck occasionally.
Yeah, but that was always his approach, and he comes from the same town as me and Morten, and so there's something that to be said about that too, like your upbringing, kind of where we come from, the area that we come from, and that's kind of always been infused in us, I think, and we've always tried to really remain, like, just, you know, we never let any of this get to our heads, because we're very aware that it could also end just like that, from one of us getting sick or something happening or this or that. So we've always had kind of a cautious approach as far as to, like, yeah, we're the shit, we're the best, we're the, you know, we've never really seen ourselves like that, you know. It's just we were lucky enough to find each other as people and as musicians at a time that we did, because it was the early 90s and there wasn't many drummers around that could play double bass. So Meshuggah, the old drummer, left. He was an extremely good, way better drummer than I was when I joined Meshuggah. So they had to kind of make do, if you will, with the worst drummer. But there was not many drummers around, that could play double bass and stuff. And so I kind of got the chance, and I really worked hard at it, and it kind of gelled after a year or two. We kind of felt good about it, but it's always been, it's never been about, like, in the music, it might come out like we always like had something to prove, or that we were trying to, express our diversity as musicians and all the things that we can do. And look, this is so complex. Look, he can play equally with left and right hand, or whatever it might be. That has never been an issue. We've always kind of just, this music sounds so cool. That sounds amazing, but how the hell am I going to be able to play that? And then you're able to learn how to play it, and it's like, oh, that's cool. But it's never really been that about something that was fake. It was always about something genuine. We really just always loved how this kind of music that we then tended to write over the years, how that sounded, and that started early. I mean, already when I joined the band, they were already kind of set on a course that was this kind of lateral move away from back then what was considered like mainstream, whether that be, Testament or Metallica or Pantera or Death or whatever was around. We just wanted to do something else,
Yep. Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, and it's worked. It's definitely worked. And look, as being the people's band, do you feel the burden of expectation from fans at this point? Because it sounds like you do go onto the YouTube, you go onto YouTube and you read comments and the like. But do you feel as though you've got to deliver for fans at this point?
I mean, we definitely want to. But at the same time, we can't really have that be any kind of crucial aspect while we're trying to create new material. I don't think we really think about that. I will say this though, I don't know if it's impossible to keep that out completely. I mean, if you even have that in your brain, it's going to be there, whether you accept that or not, and whether you say that out loud that you write for other than yourselves. But we do really try to just write for ourselves and whatever we think sounds cool. And at this point, we believe enough in ourselves that if we think it sounds cool, we are pretty sure that the fans will dig it too. But of course, there's you as a band, I think you always should continue to worry whether other people think you're still doing something cool or whether they think it's shit, because sometimes I think, having been in this band for so long, the longer you've been in it, the more you're kind of in a bubble, and yes, you do get to see and appreciate and take in the whatever the comments, the accolades, whatever they are, but there's always also another side of things. There's always people that are not going to like this kind of music. We fully accept that. Of course, it's not for everyone, but you do have all those things that of course is there for you to use as a motor, as a drive for you to keep going. So it wouldn't be fair to say that it's something we completely disregard or discard as far as like fans' opinion of our music, but it's more after the fact than during whatever the creative process that we try to really kind of lock ourselves in and kind of just be focused on what we're doing,
Yeah, that definitely comes across. Yeah. I think real fans are with you for the journey, and people on the periphery sort of dip in and out, but that's just how things go. So, hey, look, have I got a bit more time for a couple more questions? Is that cool, or have you got to go to the next one or do something else? Or
No, it's all good, man.
Have you thought about doing a project with Jess? Has she ever tried to get you to fill in Brujeria?
No, not Brujeria, but we have talked about this for years, like trying to do something. And I'm sorry to say, but I'm the procrastinator, and I'm the reason why nothing ever happens. She always has a bunch of great ideas, and she wants to record stuff, and whether it's, it doesn't even matter whether it turns out good or not. It's just like a fun thing to do, and I'm gonna have to shape up on that and get everything going, because even for a few years I haven't even gotten the Cubase on this workstation at home to work. And at some point I just gave up. And then you have the band, and then we were writing for a year and a half in the band, and then you don't want to come home and put on Cubase at home, and then your brain is kind of fried. But she's rooting for us already, even though we never wrote anything yet. But she's like, yeah, I'm the kind of the brake pad in this regard. I'm sorry to say.
I'll come out whenever it comes out, mate. You're busy, and I know she is too. So it's one of those things we can look forward to maybe in a decade's time or so. Yeah. What about you worked with one of my favourite musicians of all time recently, Trace Bruins from Mr. Bungle and Faith No More. You worked with him recently on the Imperial Triumphant album, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that is giving me way too much credit. I did not work with him. I did not meet him. We had a session one day where Kenny Grahowski, the drummer, invited me to play taiko drums in Brooklyn, and I'd never played taiko drums before, and I really had no idea what I was doing. I was playing it all wrong, but it was a fun day, and they recorded a bunch of it, and some of whatever that session was ended up on their album. But I deserve absolutely no credit for any of that. That was just 3 hours of fun playing taiko drums, and they recorded it, and that was my whole involvement in it. So
I would love to hear you do something with Trace Bruins and Trevor Dunn, the bassist from Mr. Bungle as well. That would be an unreal trio.
Oh, Mr. Bungle, man, they were actually, it's annoying, your brain sometimes, because we do so much interviews now, especially, of course, right, these last few weeks when you have a new album coming out, and there's so many bands that you want to mention. There's so many bands that you forget all the time, because you tend to mention kind of the metal bands or some old, really what we grew up with, Rush and Marillion and Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and all that stuff. But you forget the really kind of super crucial years for me, I think, was from when I was 17, 18 to maybe 22, 23, right around the time before and after I joined the band, a couple of years before and after. And I listened so much to Mr. Bungle back then and Primus and bands like that, and then I usually fail to mention, and Pantera as well. Pantera had a huge impact on us, early 90s as a band, because they were kind of the only kind of metal band that was still kind of going strong during all that grunge stuff, because you had the big ones. You had Metallica, obviously, 91 Black Album, of course, they were always huge. But when you go down one level, there was not so much happening, because grunge kind of took over everything. And we sure enjoyed grunge too. Don't get me wrong. I listened the hell out of Alice in Chains and stuff like that, and Nirvana and those are yet even more bands that I always fail to mention, because you tend to what metal bands do we listen to? Oh yeah, this, and you tend to kind of forget all those kind of quirky bands and Dead Can Dance and stuff like that. I listened to a lot of weird stuff back then, even weird bands like 13th Floor Elevators and You see,
cool
there's
stuff,
my brain again. So on a daily basis, when you're trying to kind of give something back to those bands that you kind of were inspired by as a youngin', you kind of just kind of at a loss, and you're oh, Black Sabbath, that's one. And then you're stuck, it's a bummer. I need to start making lists that I can just read off a list. Oh yeah, this band and this band. because I do feel like sometimes that especially when you do like big important interviews and stuff, and then you don't give kind of credit where credit's due, and some of those bands really meant a lot to us, as who we were and for the age that we were in. And I know that Frederick and Jens, for example, and the also the original bass player Peter Norden, that was the setting when I joined the band. They listened so much to Holy Moses, this German band.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah,
and their early stuff like New Machine of Liechtenstein and Finished with the Dogs, those two albums. And it was crazy. And that they took actually a lot of the early Meshuggah stuff, like as far as the drumming and the kind of some of the stuff is really kind of almost like a page out of their book, ripped straight out and put to use, so and that's another band that you failed to, it's like, trying to think of bands, but Holy Moses is one of those bands that just never pop into my brain. So I'm glad I'm here to get to tell you at least.
Yeah, and look, you have given some props to Tim Alexander in other interviews that I've listened to recently as well, which is very, very, very cool, because he's one of those drummers that he's worked with Alex Skolnick from Testament. He can almost do anything, but people don't know about him or people don't talk about him. So I'm really glad a drummer of your stature or of note has actually given him some props.
Oh yeah, I would not be the drummer that I am today if it wasn't for Tim Alexander and Primus. He had a huge impact on me, that definitely, for sure, 100%.
Australia. I watched your last gig, your last tour down here. I watched it at the Tivoli in Brisbane, and holy shit! I think I wrote a review about that one there, and it ended up going viral. Not viral, but it ended up getting shared across some things. And I think I said something to the effect of the structural engineers will need to be called in to assess the foundations of the building after you guys have left. Such was the crushing performance.
Okay. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think that was a line that got singled out and got shared. But look, it was an almighty performance. And even what's the band that went on before you? Thy Art is Murder. CJ Mann beforehand. What did he say? He said something along the lines of, look, when we were offered the Meshuggah spot, it was like we were really excited, but then we realised that we were going on before Meshuggah. So, meaning it's a hard act to sort of go, oh shit, we've got to warm the fans up and the like. But it all alludes to something else. So okay, I feel like as though you're a special band for Australian fans. Do you feel the same way?
Yes, we've always felt that. I think and that's why we are always asking our managers and bookers, like, what is it looking like in Australia? When can we go there? We do love coming there. We do not love the flight and the jet lag that we have to deal with, obviously, but we do love the people. We do love the vibe, and we always enjoy ourselves down there. And we do feel like we have a special connection with Australian people, maybe more than any other country or region in the world. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe because in a certain way, like Swedes are little outsiders, and you're for sure outsiders kind of geographically in a sense. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but we always felt very welcome there, and we're always jonesing to go there when we're kind of in touring mode. And unfortunately, bookers, promoters, and that whole thing is not always like ideal. So sometimes I know that we've had offers that we had to decline because it wasn't like financially viable to do it, because we do bring these days, we don't hiring crew locally anymore. We have our set crew. So we're basically 15 people traveling wherever we're going, and we do bring a lot of gear, so it's shipping, et cetera. So it at this point in time, you're not just a band, but you're also a company, and you have to try to run your company fairly as efficiently as you can. And that means sometimes we do end up in situations where we're like, oh man, what a fucking bummer, because it just didn't make sense financially or whatever. But
yeah,
You know, I think, I mean, for this one, we're obviously coming to Australia. There's no doubt about it. And we have been for every album, I think, for at least like the last 4 albums or so. And we're definitely looking forward to coming down there again. And we'll just do like we did last time. We flew in like a week before, so we had like a week off to try to kind of slowly, you know, kind of get out of that jet lag, because it really hits you like a hammer, man. There's no joking it away, you know, when you're literally kind of as far as you can go from us and going eastward. Westward is always way easier, but eastward, oh man,
you lose a day plus. Yeah. And just something else there too. I went through uni with a bunch of Swedes. And it was really weird. We were so similar, meaning the Australians and the Swedes were so similar, because you might know this, there are a bunch of Swedish people living in Australia these days. And there's a lot on the Gold Coast actually too. It's people move here from Sweden and they just don't leave. And I think that's because it's culturally, I get we're part of the Western Hemisphere, but it's deeper than that. There's something else. And I think you might have touched on it there. We're slightly quirky in some respects, but I do think I've noticed about the Scandinavian, Swedish people in particular, you're prepared to give people a chance, like we are in Australia. You give people what I call a fair go. Yeah, that might be the case, and I think to a certain degree, our sense of humor tend to kind of line up a lot too. Like. You guys are funny as hell. Like that's how we see you. At least we think Australians are on average a very humoristic people, and Swedes maybe are not seen as such. But once you get to know them a little bit, most Swedes have kind of a quirky, dark, weird sense of humor, and not that different from the Brits and the British. Obviously, you have something of that, obviously, and there's something that translates, you know. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, mate. Look, I'll make this my last one for you, but I need to know, when is the book coming out? Because I'd love to read it. Oh man, yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, there's not even anything in the plans. yeah. We got I someone actually asked Morten about this a few years back, a few years back, and Morten's initial kind of response was no, why would we? We never did anything. Like there's nothing to write about. And then his friend, a close friend who's very kind of intimately almost familiar with what we've actually done over the last 20 years or so, 30 years, he like looked at Morten like, what the hell are you talking about? You got this thing, you have that thing, all these different things. And Morten was like, yeah, that's right. Maybe there is a bunch of weird shit that's funny that we could write about. And especially if you throw some extra salt on it too, like they all do, like Motley Crue, I'm sure there's a heap of extra salt you put in there to kind of make everything a little, you know, turn it up a peg or two just to make it even worse, you know? So kind of, I guess, you know, we'll see. But I think that also, it kind of ties in with that what we were talking about earlier, what we touched on, like how you're kind of a people's band and you're not kind of seeing yourself as something spectacular in any way, shape, or form. Really, you were just kind of a few guys that got lucky. But that kind of maybe ties into this too. I don't think any one of us like feels like, what do you mean? Like, why would anyone want to be interested in reading about us? You know, but we'll see. Well, I actually think you should come out with a book too, though. I mean, there's so many great stories out there. So I'm talking to a few people at the moment, or talking to Cam Lee, for example. I mean, I'm just talking, exploring the ideas at the moment about writing the books. I write books, you see, and there's hardly any metal books out there. There's like half a dozen to a dozen out there. You know, there's Max Cavalera's, Rex from Panteras. But beyond that, we don't really have, as fans, your book to dive into. And, mate, I'd read it and think a lot of people feel the same. Yeah, maybe. I'm going to have to start thinking about that shit. Yeah. Maybe make Meshuggah on the side from the books. Why not? And then you can do your speaking tours like what bloody Scott Ian did. It's all there.
Yeah, I don't know about that, man.
Yeah, I don't know. They're a bit full on those things, but I think the book is a great idea. I think the great thing about a book is your story. You can write it on a plane. You can write it anywhere. You just start it, and then maybe in 5 years' time or whatever, you get to the end and you've got something resembling a manuscript, and you can hand it over to a ghostwriter who can then just sort it all out and then give it back to you, and then maybe it gets released.
That's actually, yeah. Thanks for the hint and the nudge.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. You can tell I'm an old school fan of the group. I've just so admired what you guys have done now for so long, and I love this new album. By the way, I love that you're keeping it real. I love that there's no curveballs. That the whole band through your career, you've just given it the way you feel like you need to give it to the people, and we've just loved you for it. So congratulations on that front, and hope to see you down here soon.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that.
No worries, bro.
All right.
Have a great one.
Yeah,
thanks,
you too.
Gotcha.
Sure.
What a lovely fella. I do enjoy talking to the Swedes, I must confess, particularly those who are near to my vintage. Maybe even a bit older, as Tomas alluded to there. Either way, what a killer chat. Now, before I let you go, I'm going to play a promo to do with my recently released book, Scars and Guitars, Volume 1. Any and all support is greatly appreciated. Here we go.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
If you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words, sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very, very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
My name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.